My guest today is an old friend and a colleague, Sumati Sparks. We've been guests on each other's shows over the years, and we're back here to talk about polyamory. And
Hello, everybody. Hearts, love.
I want you to know a little bit about my friend, Sumati Sparks. She is known as the Open Relationship Coach. She's been practicing ethical non-monogamy for 23 years. And since 2000, she's been coaching people in the areas of relationship and sexuality, and now specializes in helping people create loving and passionate, open relationships. Now, full disclosure here, Sumati and I are both in polyamorous relationships. I've been in a poly relationship for 10 years, and it's a poly V, meaning that we don't, polyfidelitas V, which means we don't go outside of our relationship. It's just the three of us. And it's a V, meaning that not everybody is having sex. There's one person in the middle, and then there's two of us who have that person as a sexual partner. So, Sumati, is it too early in the interview to ask you about your poly status?
No, not at all. But I just started noticing hammering on the floor above me. Can you hear it? Okay, good. It's like, that's not very good timing.
We're too distracted by your beauty.
Oh, thank you. Well, actually, I am pandemic single.
Okay.
I ended a relationship in February, so really bad timing.
Oh,
And I've met some sweet people over the last almost year.
right.
Nothing has really turned into like a full sustainable romantic relationship. But I've made some great friends and I've had some fun times. And so I'm kind of in this like pandemic dating mode, and I've done a lot of research on it, and I've been sharing it with my clients about what I've learned about the nuances of meeting people during these times.
Oh, do tell, because I know that a lot of people are in your situation right now too. I have clients that are like, what's the point of Match.com if we can't get together in person and all
Right.
that stuff. So what is the secret to success if you're single
Okay.
during COVID?
Okay. Well, I'll give you a few. There's kind of like maybe three, maybe four pieces of information I want to share. So the first is just to know that we can look at the silver lining and use the pandemic kind of like a chaperone. It makes you go slower. It makes you really get to know the person before you dive in. It kind of forces you not to just act on that initial attraction. And many of us who are polyamorous, we've had a lot of different people we've dated and been in a relationship with, and most people can relate to, being really attracted to somebody, diving into the sexual relationship, and then 3 or 6 months later going, I don't really even like you that much. Once the honeymoon wears off, right? So it's kind of hard to do that during these times, because you want to make sure that you know the person well enough and trust them enough to be able to have that, what I call safer COVID conversation. Instead of the safer sex conversation, we have a safer COVID conversation.
Oh my God. Okay, so let's just slow down for just a second, because I love the concepts that you are introducing here. So if we look at the pandemic as having a silver lining, we can actually consider it our chaperone,
Yeah.
so that we slow things down. And then instead of just looking at safer sex protocols, you're looking at safer pandemic protocols.
Correct.
What might those be?
Well, it's a similar conversation to those of us who know about having a safer sex conversation. We talk about, when were you last tested? So, and same with, when did you get a COVID test? What was the result of the STI test or the COVID test? Who else are you having sex with? But before you even get to that with your new date, you might want to say, who else are you sharing air with?
Right. So instead of just bodily fluids, now we're interested in who are you sharing air with. See,
Right.
it's brilliant.
Yeah. And you want to like have the same comfort level of risk, because I've put together this kind of imaginary scale. Like 1 is my 80-something-year-old mother who is afraid to leave the house. And 10 is like somebody who goes to a Trump rally. Okay. So like, where are we in that,
Right, right.
scale? So, I was pretty close to like a 2 for a long time. But then because of my own emotional well-being, I just had to take some calculated risks to have a few more friends, a little bit more touch. And so now I'm like maybe a 3 or 4. I'm on Maui. It's really different here. Everybody has to get a test before they even come on the island. It's really low COVID rates here. So it's a little different energy. So I feel like I'm be closer to a 4 here.
Yeah.
If I was in California, I'd probably be going back toward a 2. So it kind of depends on where you are also.
I
But
I'm in California and I'm pretty sure I'm a 2 on your scale.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So,
Yeah.
it depends on where you are and the rates there and what your comfort level with risk is. So you want to date somebody who's kind of maybe 1 degree on either side of you at the most, because otherwise they're going to be taking risks. One of you will be taking risks that the other is not comfortable with.
Okay, can I do a reality check on that? Because I love the scale that you've devised here. So my partner and his wife are both 13 years older than I am, and they do not go anywhere at all. I, on the other hand, go to my office, go to the store, go to the post office, and that's about it. And I do that always with wearing a mask.
Right.
So would I be within a degree of them?
Well, really, it's your conversation with them.
Okay.
Do they feel comfortable with you going to those places, knowing they know you really well? So there's a degree of trust that they know you're going to tell the truth, that you're not going to lie about it.
Right.
And so they believe you when you say that you always wear your mask inside and you always social distance or pass people quickly. Like they trust that you do all those things to minimize exposure. So I would imagine that they would feel safe with you doing those things and not kick you out and like not ever let you come into their house, you know?
No, we have coordinated our protocols. They're aware of what mine are. I'm aware of what theirs are.
Yeah,
And,
yeah,
and I said they don't go anywhere. They do go to the doctor and
yeah.
sometimes get
So
body.
it's just the conversation that you have about if you, so I'll give you an example.
Okay.
So one man that I met early on, well, maybe about midway through the pandemic, it was before this recent really bad, I was living in California. So it was before this recent really bad spike in California, maybe quite a bit before. Anyway, he was new to polyamory and he was sowing his wild oats and he just didn't keep track of, he wasn't going to large crowds and he wore a mask in stores and stuff, but he wanted to just sleep with whoever he wanted to. And even when his son came over and his son's girlfriend, I said, well, do you know who else they are air bonded with? And he goes, no, I didn't ask them. So I said, well, that's just too loosey goosey for me. I don't judge you for like being excited about polyamory and wanting to have lots of lovers, but that's just out of my comfort zone. So we might have to just put the pause button on it and post pandemic, we can like reconnect and see where we're at with each other. And then there's another guy that on the other extreme, so what I normally do is I have a quick phone call, I have a video call or two, depending on how soon we can get together. And then we have a social distance hike. Now, if the person is like too far away and you can't see them for a while, you can continue to have video calls and phone calls and texts. And you may not need to do a social distance hike on your first meeting if you already get to know each other really, really well virtually. But a typical pattern would be if they live near you, a phone call, a video call, and then a social distance meeting. And I put together like a list of things. I'd be happy to share that with you later of like ideas to do on a social distance dates, both in the summer and the winter.
Yes, I was just going to say, not all of my clients are up for hikes because of
Yeah, I was
mobility
doing that in the
issues.
summer. Yeah, and now I'm in Hawaii, so we can do everything outside. Um, but no, I put together a list for people that live in cold weather as well.
Oh, good.
So you do something social distance with them, and I did that with somebody, and it was warm. It was the beautiful fall that we had in the Bay Area. It was really nice and warm, and he wore his mask the whole time. And even when we sat, and I wore mine too, but then we sat on a bench across the walkway from each other and not even like straight in front of each other. We sat kind of like staggered. And I was like, I'm going to take this off. It's just hot when you're hiking, you get hot. So I took it off and he didn't take his off. And then we went into a restaurant, an outdoor seating restaurant. And he left it on until the minute he was eating and then eat, and put it right back on. So he was just so like over, and he wouldn't give me a hug even after spending like 3 hours together. He wouldn't give me like one of those masked social distance, those
Yeah,
masked hugs where you turn
right.
away and wear your mask. He wouldn't even do that.
Oh,
So I felt like he was a little too closer to a one for me, right? So those are examples of people I dated where I felt like they were just out of my range.
that is really great, and I think it's important not to judge.
Right.
For me now, see, I do social distancing hikes with friends all the time, and I don't wear a mask at all unless I see somebody approaching us on the trail and they
Right.
happen
Right.
to be wearing a mask. Then, out of respect, I put mine on.
Hmm.
Or if I see people approaching who aren't doing social distancing, I put on
Yeah.
a mask.
Right. Right.
But but I don't hug. That's been one of the things that I haven't done.
Hmm.
So I think, like you're saying, conversations about what are your protocols and also what are your vulnerabilities, right?
Right. What's your underlying conditions and your age and all that. Yeah.
Yeah. And this isn't really that far removed. I mean, as a sexologist, safer sex conversations are never about obliterating risk. It's about mitigating risk and finding out what your comfort zone is.
That's why we call it a safer sex conversation instead of a safe sex, because there's no such thing as safe sex.
Exactly. I tell people, I said, if you want safe sex, stay home and jerk off to the porn.
That's the safest, right?
Yeah. That may be, as long as you don't sprain anything, then you're safe. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Wow.
so that's what I've learned, and I found that if I do a phone call first, then it helps me. I don't have to put on, makeup and do my hair and figure out what I'm going to wear. I can just be in my yoga pants and lay on the couch and just kind of have a quick phone call to see if they know how to show up for an appointment, like the basics, see if their voice doesn't irritate me, see if we have anything at all to talk about. Like just start there, and don't waste my time because, online dating is a needle in a haystack process. So you got to give yourself plenty of like, you have to invest some time in it. Some people get lucky. It's like winning the lottery. Some people are like, oh yeah, my first ticket, I won $10,000. But most of us have to kind of plug away. And, I used to always meet people in person at events that I went to. So to meet people virtually, you just have to put a bit more time. So to not get burned out in the process, I just recommend a quick phone call just to not waste your time getting dressed up, driving somewhere and finding out in the first 2 seconds that you can't even stand the sound of their voice, or something
Right.
like that.
So would the first thing be you exchange an email, then a phone call, then a video call, and then meet in person?
Yeah, everyone's different. Like I met somebody recently who was super paranoid about his identity online.
Uh,
So I didn't even know that the dating app I was using, which was OkCupid, had a video calling option on it. I didn't even know that. He's
uh,
like, he didn't even want to give me his phone number. A lot of guys will put their phone number in their ad. They're like, please call me. And
right.
I won't put my phone number first, just as a woman. Sorry, it's still rape culture. I'm just not going to put my number in the app. So I want him to give me his number. And this guy wouldn't give it to me. He wanted to first do a video call through the app before he met me. So, okay, so we did that. And so yeah, just but the typical pattern is a quick phone call. And if you so usually, let me just back up. You asked a question about, do you call each other? So
Right.
first you figure out how you're going to do your first point of contact, and usually the guy will give you the number, especially if you ask for it, if you date men.
Right.
But if it's two women, I don't know. I haven't dated women, so I don't know how they do that. But I have actually given an email address just for more anonymity, and I just give them like an email address I don't use very often. You can
Mm.
always just make an anonymous email address. I've given them my professional Zoom link first because that feels kind of anonymous. I just change my name on it till I feel
Mm.
safe with them. So there's ways to do it without giving out your phone number. But
Oh,
somehow you want to get off the app and have some kind of a connection. And if that feels good, then you go on to either an in-person meeting if you're like feeling super connected, or maybe do a video call. I know people that want to start with the video. They don't want to do the phone call at all because they just can't get a sense of a person at all. And if they don't mind taking that time to do their hair and makeup and put on a nice blouse, then go for it. But to me, I just want to be able to meet a lot of people. So it just seems more time efficient to have a phone call first. then a
Yeah,
video
and
call, then
one of the
in
things
person.
that I like, by the way, I can hear the hammering in the background now.
Now you can hear it. Yeah,
Yeah, but hopefully our viewers will forgive us because this
yeah.
information is so vital for. And by the way, the tips that you are giving us have nothing to do with poly. This goes for anybody who wants to
True,
date.
true.
I'm thinking of several of my clients who are in the dating mode right now and how frustrating it's been for them. So I
Mhm.
can't wait to share these tips, and I'll just send this video to them so they can check it out.
Right, right. And
Exhaustion.
just to, before you go on, I have, these all in like a PDFs. So, feel free to
Oh,
reach out to me and I can give you
oh,
those
good.
too.
Okay. All right. Yeah, maybe we can actually even put them below the
Okay,
YouTube for people
great,
who want to check them out.
great.
The whole thing about it, that it's time consuming to date. Is it more time consuming now because of COVID, or was it just always?
No, I mean, if you're meeting people primarily online,
Yeah.
that's more time consuming because when you meet somebody at a live event, you're getting a more holistic sense of the person. You're feeling their energy, you're seeing their whole body, you know, you kind of know sooner if there's anything there. Whereas with virtual dating, it takes a while to get to the point where you're meeting in person. So it just takes more time.
Oh, Sumati, I remember 3 years on the phone with a guy that I had met online through an online dating app. And this is quite a few years ago. It was before I met my partner. And I thought that 3 years of conversation, we must know each other pretty well. But it didn't tell me a lot of things until we were in person. Um, I didn't know he had an anger management issue, for instance. And I don't know how you could tell those things without being in traffic with somebody or in social situations.
Right,
You
right.
see how they behave.
Hmm.
Yeah. So, what are some of the uh, tips that you would give people who are wanting to make sure that that they wind up in a dating situation with somebody that they're compatible with? How do you do that online?
Well, again, you're using the pandemic as a chaperone to force you to go a little slower because oftentimes if you're really attracted to someone sexually, then you're kind of bonded with them and the sex hormones are pumping and you become blind to a lot of those other red flags. So that's what's good about this is that you can go slow where you might have a first date where you're 10 feet apart wearing masks and then maybe a second date where you talked about it and you both feel comfortable with maybe doing a little more. But you're just going slower. So you have a chance to spend more time with them before those sex hormones make you blind to the red flags, you know? So you want to be watching the red flags. You want to be watching those little things. And you can ask questions. I mean, I actually looked up on the internet once, what are some good questions to ask on a first date? And I found a bunch of websites. I just chose one and we passed the phone back and forth asking each other questions.
Oh, fun! Was it fun?
Yeah, it was really much more interesting because he was talking too much, which is a common thing I tend to run into with cisgendered straight men. And so I got to where I would say to them, so if you had to ask me a question, what would it be?
Oh my God, yes. Okay, so wait a second. Wait a second. This is a recurring issue with cisgender heterosexual men. Can we just take a pause and talk about that for a minute about this
I
talking too
asked
much
I
thing?
asked the guy point blank about it. I said, why does this keep happening? And he goes, I don't know. It's just, I just wanted to get a sense of you. It's like for them, it's about they're looking if they feel turned on, I think. I don't know. I'm not a man, but I'm imagining that
How do you get
they,
a sense of me if you're doing all the talking?
yeah, maybe it's just peacocking, it's there. So I
Yeah,
say, you want to not just be interesting, you want to be interested.
exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly. Don't just be interesting, be interested.
right.
Underline that.
Yes,
Absolutely.
yes.
Yeah. So ask her some questions.
Uh-huh. So
Yeah.
I asked this guy if you were going to ask me, he was a blah 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 on the whole hike, and then toward the end of the hike, I was like, so if you were going to ask me a question, what would it be? And he goes, what's your favorite food? It
Oh,
was just like the
oh
dumbest question.
no.
So that's why the
Oh,
next time it happened, I looked up the list and I said, here, ask me a question on this list. I gave him my phone. I was like serving it up on a platter here.
oh my Lord. Well, sometimes you have to do that.
And I used to be like that too. And when I became a podcaster, I had to learn to listen better and ask follow-up questions. So I had a reason to get good at that because I used to go blah, blah, blah all the time too. And I had people accuse me of like, oh, it's all about you. So I have compassion for that.
Well, thank you and bless you for having that compassion, Symphony. And it just reminds me that I used to play the role of the diva too. And although part of that role was being a muse, which meant I had to ask lots of questions too. But yes, my girlfriends, oh, I feel so sorry for them because I oftentimes just made it all about me.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so we've been so far talking about tips dating during the pandemic that would apply for anybody, whether they want to be monogamous or poly or single, whatever. um, Going into, if somebody wants to be poly, if they're already poly, um, it seems really complicated. I know some poly couples that have had disagreements about who they can bring into their polycule or polypod,
Hmm.
because they didn't like the way that particular person was handling their pandemic protocols.
Right.
So I would imagine this kind of complicates it even further. But I'd just love to hear your insights about that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It amplifies it, makes it much more challenging because you'll have, one person who's more conservative and another person may be a frontline worker. So, or even I have a friend who, her boyfriend's other partner, her metamor, um, has like a elderly parent that they take care of. So then that makes the whole pod have to be more cautious. So she wants to have another lover because, her lover has two lovers, right? Her male lover has two women,
Okay.
but she can't find anybody else because of their strict protocol. So it's been really frustrating for her. And I just tell her, keep trying, I'm sure you'll find somebody who is maybe just been alone the whole time and they're, aren't seeing anybody else and they work from home. So you just have to be patient and keep putting the time in, just like anything. If you're learning a new skill, I remember when I was trying to learn ballroom dancing and I would go 1 or 2 nights a week and I kind of stalled at like kind of the beginning to intermediate level. And I knew if I really wanted to become a ballroom dancer, I'd have to do it 3 or 4 nights a week. And I just didn't like it that much to commit to that. So with anything, you have to put in, several days a week. And so just kind of make it part of your hobby that you're going to spend a little bit of time every day, and not just on dating apps. There's other things too I want to mention. There's been tons of online festivals and tantra workshops and things like that. I also put together a list of where to find those. So I'll put all this stuff below your notes on your video.
Okay. So places where people can meet other people.
Yeah, and there's
That
a
isn't
friend.
just
Yeah,
on a dating app.
yeah, and there's speed dating events. There's all kinds of virtual events. So that's a little different than just meeting someone on a dating app because you go into breakout rooms and you can actually have deeper conversations with them. And I know sometimes the online tantra workshops are really fun because you're not just talking, you're kind of breathing together, making eye contact and getting a little more of a sense of the person. So it's a little closer to real life. Um,
Beautiful.
there's that. And then there's also asking your friends. And I know that feels really vulnerable, but we're all in this together right now. And just to tell your close friends like what you're looking for. And, maybe they know someone that you don't know. You can also ask your friends if you can join their bubble just to cuddle, even if it's not somebody you want to have sex with, but just somebody to have touch with. Can I just join your bubble? We can have a talk about protocol and I'll, you know, abide by that. I just need somebody to like cuddle and watch movies with. So, don't be afraid to ask for that too.
Because touch is not it's not a superfluous aspect of being a human being. It's actually
Correct. And this is going on almost a year now. And if you
it
haven't had much
is.
touch, we start to get cuckoo.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
We absolutely need touch for our immune system and our mental health, our physical health.
Hmm.
Really important.
Yeah.
You used a poly term. I'm just going to back up a little bit. You said metamor, and I
Uh-huh.
just want you to help define that for our viewers.
Yeah, so the metamor is your partner's other partner. And so it doesn't necessarily mean, so you're in a V. So you have your guy, and he has you, and he has his wife. And
Exactly.
so you and the wife are metamors. You two aren't lovers. So you're metamors.
That's a metamor. Oh, thank you. That's it. Now, okay, I've got a question for you. So obviously I didn't know what that term meant, and I'm excited to have a term to describe my situation. But if I'm trying to describe it to people who aren't poly savvy, what would you suggest? Because I just don't want them to associate me with Mormons.
Yeah, like you're the other woman, or
Yes, just
the
please, no, not the situation at all. And they're
the
always surprised when I
mistress.
talk about how she and I support each other and love each other, but we're not sexual with each other. And I just get so tired of explaining that.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So
Yeah, I know
metaphor
that.
probably not going to be a word they would know.
Yeah, well, you can define it for them, or you can just say sister wife. No, just kidding.
No, somebody stop it.
No, I mean, I remember one time I was talking to this man. We were, before the pandemic, we were out on the sidewalk, ready to go into like a book signing of some kind of sex positive book. And
Yeah.
we were talking for a minute, and then he pointed at this woman and he said, "That's so and so. And we've lived together for 4 years." And I like that he introduced her by the facts instead of by a label. He didn't say my partner, my girlfriend, my wife, my nesting mate. He didn't use any label. He just told me the facts. So then
Right.
I could say, like, okay, so they clearly have a close relationship. They've been living together for 4 years. I know how long. And
Yeah.
it gives me like a sense of who he is polyamorous wise. And I just liked that. So I think if we just state the fact in a short sentence, then let other people's have their heads explode. That's not your problem.
Okay, well that's a good point. Um, so speaking of some of the things that can be a little bit um, difficult in poly, I noticed that you really take a deep dive into the whole thing around jealousy. So, what could you share with us about how to work with jealous feelings if you are polyamorous?
Yeah, thank you. Well, I'll just briefly touch into my story and then tell you how I came to be, a jealousy expert. Some polyamorous people just don't feel a lot of jealousy. I think in general, there's more people that don't feel much jealousy in the polyamorous community than in the monogamous community. Um, but many of us do. And you can be polyamorous and, dance with jealousy. It's possible. So I used to be extremely jealous before I was in open relationships. And I got into open relationships from kind of a monogamy model where I had a primary partner and we had all these agreements, and we would check in with each other before we went on a date with someone else and try to abide by what the other needed to not feel too upset. And then I got into a relationship with someone who was married, and I dated him for 5 years. And when that ended, I I had a total meltdown. I really felt the couple's privilege of he and his wife. I didn't feel like I had much power in it, and
Mm,
I didn't handle the ending of that relationship very well as far as my own self-care, and that made me like throw myself into, because I knew that I couldn't thrive as a monogamous person. So the only way I was going to be able to be happy and be poly was to figure out this jealousy thing.
mm.
So I just threw myself into reading all the books and doing all the worksheets and, listening to the podcasts and, doing all kinds of journaling and meditation and just everything I could, therapy, coaches. I really just became like a total researcher about it. So I can't say that I'm free from jealousy now. And sometimes when I speak at a conference, I'll wear a button that says I'm jealous. So it's kind of funny that I'm like a polyamory expert speaking at a conference saying I'm jealous. So it starts a conversation like, yes, you can be at the level where you're speaking at a conference and still feel jealousy. It's okay.
Yeah.
So it just doesn't have to run you.
Right.
And so
And
I'll just,
does
go ahead.
do we use that? And I'm going to introduce another poly term here and ask you to define it. Um, do we use compersion to combat jealousy?
So yeah, for people that don't know, compersion is used a lot in the non-monogamy community to mean kind of the opposite of jealousy. So instead of when you see your partner with someone else, instead of feeling jealous, compersion means you feel happy for them, for their happiness or their turn on makes you happy. And I don't think that compersion is something that you can cultivate too much. I think it just happens. It's like a gift when it happens. And some people are naturally like that. And some people, their turn on, their main kink is seeing their partner having sex or being romantic with someone else.
Yeah.
And so that's just how they're wired. But I don't know that you can learn how to have more compersion. If you can, let me know. I've just learned to dance with my jealousy and not give it as much power. And I've learned how to transform it into other feelings. Um, some
Yeah.
of the main ways that I've done that are knowing that jealousy is my own feeling. Someone else doesn't, it's not my partner's responsibility to keep me from feeling jealous.
Right. I do have something to share about compersion because I can be a jealous person as well. Um, and I think one of the things that I've learned over the last 10 years is um, finding ways to actually connect with your partner's partner,
Absolutely. That's another great strategy. Yeah.
building your own relationship with that person
Yes.
so that it's not about the three of you or the four of you, five of you, six of you, but it's just about you and that other person.
Yes.
And not, obviously in my situation, not a sexual relationship. It's just having some investment in their well-being so that you start identifying them as a family member, somebody
Yeah.
that you care about. So
Yeah.
your sense of community, of family gets bigger. Uh,
Absolutely. I'm so glad you said that because I'm a big fan of that personally. And not everybody wants to do that. And you can't always make your metamor like you. They may not even want to meet you.
right.
But if they do, that's my preferred way of being, where they call it kitchen table polyamory, where you can all just sit around the kitchen table and talk about what's up. And that's what I would have done differently in that 5-year relationship with the married guy. I would have invested more time in getting closer to his wife. That's if I had to do it all over again, I would
Yeah.
have done that more.
Yeah.
But I didn't know. I'd never been in a married relationship with a married guy. And I was kind of freaked out at first. The first time they invited me to dinner with them, I was so nervous. I was like, really? I can have dinner with my lover's wife? Like, it just freaked me out. And I just didn't know that you could do that. I didn't even know it was a thing.
Oh my gosh. So my experience was of kind of getting um, interviewed by her to see if she approved.
Oh,
And so that made me feel one down in the relationship.
yes, yes,
And
exactly.
I was very clear from the outset, this will not be a situation where I'm a secondary.
Mm-hmm.
I will not enter into a relationship where the metamor has veto power.
Right,
So
exactly.
if you need to have that, then I'm not the person.
I'm glad you said that. That's one of the things I learned from online dating was that what's great about doing online dating, even if you never meet anybody, is it helps you get clear on what you want and what you don't want. So I read out my profile. I think I know what I want. I put everything in there. And then I see this cute boy. So I go meet him. And then right off the bat, I learned that his wife has veto power. And I'm like, that means I can never see him on a birthday or a holiday or meet his kids or go to his house or anything. And so if I had like 2 other long-term lovers and he was just a side dish, fine, but I didn't. I was kind of looking for more of a deeper life partner. So I went back to my profile and said, those who have veto need not apply. Like I didn't even know to put that on there until I got out there and started dating.
Right. Right. And frankly, neither did I, by the way. I fell in love before I really realized what I was getting involved in. And I'll tell you, I made so many mistakes, but we got through them. And I kept having to do course corrections and just saying this this isn't who I am, and this doesn't work for me. I need it to be more like this.
Yes, course correction is common because we don't know what we want until we get out there and mix it up. So when people are scared about opening a relationship for the first time, I always tell them it's not going to be like overnight you're suddenly deeply in love with somebody. You're going to have one date and then you're going to come home and talk about it, and you can see what worked and what didn't work. Just take your time.
Yeah, take your time. That's really good advice.
Yeah. So jealousy. So another thing about jealousy is to know that it is survivable, because sometimes it feels like you're going to die. You might have like a knife feeling in your gut, or your heart's breaking into a million pieces, or you're telling yourself things about yourself like I'm not enough, or nobody's going to love me, or whatever those negative thoughts are. And just know that you will survive. It's not going to kill you. There's some tools and skills that will help it get better and easier for you, which I'm happy to share with you.
Yeah. Could you share one of those tools and skills with us right now?
Sure. So one of them is 100% self-love and acceptance, because especially polyamorous people, we tend to be personal growth junkies, or we wouldn't be doing this, because it's like pouring Miracle Grow on your issues.
So true.
So so we often try to be more evolved than we actually are. And
oh, yeah. That's me. Guilty.
and so to just like let it be okay where you are in the path. And personal growth is cyclical. It's not a straight line upward. We repeat old patterns in different ways, and to have compassion with yourself. And so when you can accept where you are in your journey and know that you don't have to be perfectly evolved all the time, then it's safer for you to ask for what you want. You might need some reassurance. You might need your partner to slow down a little bit. I'll give you an example. I was at a retreat with a bunch of people that I love and am intimate with, and we were all four of us were going to have a sensual experience. So the person who was my main lover at the time started kissing the other woman in our foursome. And I got triggered because I'd never seen him kiss her before. So, to watch him like really passionately, romantically kiss someone started triggering me. And I thought what would really help me is if I could just speak up. And we were all going around and sharing what we needed for the experience. So there was a safe place for that. So when it came to me, I said, you know what I need right now? I would really like to lay down and have you all just hold me. And I just want to cry. Nobody did anything wrong here. You're all beautiful. I love you all. I just need to feel held and seen and release this fear that I'm having. And while I'm laying there crying, I want you guys to tell me that you want me to be here. Like, because that's my core wound, is being unwanted. And so I wanted just reassurance that I'm wanted, that they want me there. And so it literally, because I was so clear about what I needed and could ask for it, and it was scary to ask for it, but I did, because I was so clear and I asked exactly what I wanted, I moved through it in like minutes. And I was so open and raw that it like turn on came out of that. From that openness and that vulnerability, it didn't go away. It just kind of transformed into turn on. So it was an amazing, magical experience.
I so relate to what you're saying right now. For myself, my partner and I don't have group experiences with my metamorph. Learning the new word here. But I do sometimes have bouts of jealousy. And for me, sharing that, and also I'm somebody who, if I get information, like just being able to ask, because my trigger is feeling excluded.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And it's not that I feel excluded by the sex that they share, it's that I may feel excluded about not knowing about it, wanting to feel some connection that way.
Yes.
And then when I feel connected to what they share in whatever fashion we decide to explore, everything relaxes.
Yeah.
I feel more grounded, more present. and more capable of being turned on. When you said that, there's like getting in touch with my eroticism through being vulnerable about
Yes.
my fear.
Right.
Yeah,
I'm glad you see that. That's great.
yeah.
Yeah. And there's a beautiful skill in there that we can learn with our partners is to hold the space for their feelings. So many of my clients have this issue where, and you probably see this too with your clients, where one person is afraid to tell the other person how they're feeling because of how the other person might react. So then they end up lying and withholding and, downplaying things because this person might freak out or get angry or whatever, right? So if this person can learn to hold the space for their feelings and know that it's not about you, it's about their feelings. Get your ego out of the way. It's not you. You're just holding beautiful space for them to express themselves.
Right.
Then they'll do it more often and they'll feel safer to do it. And then you can both negotiate what you need around it. But if they're withholding and hiding and you're freaking out, you're never going to get anywhere.
So true. And if there is withholding, eventually the sex life will die.
Right.
That's a given. So,
Mhm.
and let's face it, us poly people love sex.
And intimacy.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. But I
And some
think
people use the word intimacy as a pseudonym for sex. I think of it as two different things.
I do too, actually. It's you want emotional closeness.
Yes, yes.
But
Into me you
by,
see,
by the
like
way,
being
you
seen.
find you fine tuning that I think is important for us to just distinguish poly from promiscuity.
Hmm.
For just I imagine most of the people on my webpage right now get that, but let's just make it overt.
Well, I always like to use this example. One of the first polyamory conferences I went to about 20 years ago, there was a woman sitting at my table who was in her 50s at the time. And she said, I hate it when people assume that polyamorous folks are promiscuous. She said, I've only slept with 4 men in my life, and 3 of them are here at the conference with me.
Yes, exactly. Totally.
And there's also kind of a spectrum. Like there's swinging, which is people that just want to have sex for sport, and they don't usually they try to avoid too much emotional connection with the people they're having sex with, although that happens because we're human. But the intention is the couple's going to go play, and then the couple's going to go home together. And then the pure polyamory would be like you have a closed polyfidelous relationship. You're not looking for other lovers. But there's tons of crossover.
There
Um,
it is.
some of the communities that I was hanging out with in the Bay Area before the pandemic, they have play parties, and I don't call them swinger parties because we're not swinging, we're not swapping wives. We're sometimes having emotional and sexual intimacy with our friends, people that we love, loving friendships. There's a lot of crossover there. It's play, it's light sexuality without a lot of expectations, but we do love each other and care about each other as friends and have high expectations for communication and respect and consent and all those things. So there's tons of crossover.
Yes, there is. There absolutely is. Sumati, I've really enjoyed our conversation. You and I'm sure we will talk a lot longer, but I am going to have to
I
wrap
can't believe
up.
how fast the time went.
I know, right? It's so true. I want to give you an opportunity to direct the viewers over to where they can find you and your fabulous coaching. I mean, I'm a relationship coach and you just coached me in a lot of ways. So I think very highly of what you're offering here.
Thank you so much. Yeah. You can apply for a 45-minute complimentary consultation with me by going to my website, sumatisparks.com, sumatisparks.com, SUMATI, Sumati. And you'll see the application on there. And just feel free I love doing consultations. So don't hesitate to ask if there's anything you want some help with, and no pressure to work with me. I'll send you an email afterwards and we can decide, if we want to go forward. So no, I'm not like a salesy kind of person at all, but I learn a lot from every consultation that I do. And I also have a Facebook group called Successful Open Relationships and Polyamory. So just search for that on Facebook and request to join the group. And there we have all kinds of rich discussion and share resources and workshops and all kinds of things. So look me up in one of those two places.
Absolutely. But don't leave out your podcast.
Yes, so you can find that on my website as well. It's a radio show that rolls over to a podcast. So just look for the page on my website that says radio show, and all the past episodes are on there.
Yeah. Awesome. Awesome. Love you so much.
Thank you so much, Veronica. This is really fun. Best of luck to you.
Thank you. I'll see you soon.
Okay.